It was just after dinner, and Lisa was washing dishes while her 15-year-old stepson Tyler leaned casually against the kitchen counter, snacking on leftover pie. "So, who's Marissa?" he asked between bites. Lisa paused. "Who Marissa? Dad was texting her the other night. I only saw the name 'cause he left his phone on the couch. They were talking about missing their late night talks. Sounded kinda flirty." That one sentence made Lisa's stomach drop. Her hands froze in the soapy water. She forced a chuckle, brushing it off, probably someone from work. But she couldn't shake it. That night, when her husband Greg was asleep, Lisa checked his phone. No password. There it was, long threads of messages between Greg and a woman named Marissa. Nothing explicitly sexual, but emotional intimacy was threaded into every word. "I just feel like you understand me better than anyone. I think about our talks all the time. Wish we had more time alone." Lisa felt her heart crack open. This wasn't just texting. It was a bond, a secret space her husband had built with another woman, one he hadn't built with her in months, maybe years. The next day, she confronted him. At first, Greg denied it was anything serious. "It's not cheating," he insisted. "We never even touched." But Lisa wasn't asking about bodies. She was asking about hearts. They were both crying by the end of the conversation. Greg admitted it had started after a rough patch in their marriage. Lisa had been distant, overwhelmed with work and parenting. He claimed he never intended for it to go this far, but it had. Lisa couldn't ignore the betrayal. Tyler unknowingly had cracked open a hidden world with one innocent question. The worst part, now he was stuck in the middle, wondering if he'd done something wrong by speaking up. Lisa and Greg entered couples therapy. Rebuilding trust became an uphill battle. There were moments Lisa wanted to walk away entirely, but they stayed, for now, because infidelity isn't always about sex. Sometimes it's about where your soul wanders when your partner isn't looking. And sometimes the truth doesn't explode in a dramatic reveal. It unfolds in a quiet kitchen, over dishes and leftover pie. It started like any other ordinary Tuesday evening. Quiet, a little mundane, filled with the familiar clinking of dishes and the smell of leftover lasagna being reheated in the microwave. Lisa stood at the sink, scrubbing a stubborn pan with the rhythm of someone lost in thought. Her stepson, Tyler, was sitting at the small island in the kitchen, scrolling on his phone and occasionally tossing back spoonfuls of ice cream straight from the container. There was nothing remarkable about the moment, until there was. "So, who's Marissa?" Tyler asked, not even looking up, as if the name held no weight. Lisa glanced at him, her hand pausing mid-scrub. "Who?" "Marissa? I saw her name on Dad's phone. They were texting kinda late the other night. I only noticed 'cause he left his phone unlocked on the couch. She sent something like 'I miss our late night talks.' Weird, right?" Lisa's fingers went numb in the warm water. Her first instinct was to brush it off, to shield Tyler, to not make assumptions, to stay composed. "Probably someone from work," she said with a forced smile. Her voice cracked slightly on the word work, but Tyler didn't notice. He just shrugged. "Guess so. Just sounded personal." That was it. He dropped the topic and went back to his phone, but Lisa couldn't. Something about that name. Marissa clung to her like humidity. Greg had never mentioned a Marissa before. And late night talks, that phrase hit her like a cold wave. Lisa and Greg hadn't had a real, deep conversation in weeks, maybe months. Their exchanges lately had become logistical: school forms, grocery runs, scheduling conflicts. The emotional intimacy they once shared had quietly evaporated without either of them declaring it gone. That night, long after everyone was in bed, Lisa sat on the couch staring at Greg's phone. It was still where Tyler said it had been, the couch armrest. No lock screen. That in itself made her hesitate. He didn't think he had anything to hide, or he didn't care enough to hide it. Her hands trembled as she opened the messaging app. She hadn't invaded his privacy before. But now, something told her this wasn't just about curiosity. It was about truth. It was about finally acknowledging the gnawing sense of distance she had tried to ignore. There they were. Threads of messages with Marissa, a woman whose name she now hated. The texts weren't laced with explicit flirtation. No "I love yous," no confessions of desire, but somehow they felt more dangerous, more real, more emotional. You always make me feel heard. I can't wait for our lunch on Thursday. Just you and me, no office noise. I think about our talks when things get heavy at home. Lisa felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Her throat closed up. It was emotional infidelity, the kind people dismiss as not real cheating, but the kind that hurts in the spaces words can't explain. She sat frozen for nearly 10 minutes, rereading the same few texts over and over. It wasn't the betrayal of the body. It was the betrayal of attention, of vulnerability, of intimacy that was supposed to be hers. Greg had opened up a private world with someone else, a world that once belonged to her, and now her stepson knew pieces of it. That thought alone brought a new wave of emotions: guilt, anger, confusion. Lisa wasn't just a wife now grappling with betrayal. She was a stepmother caught in a web where a teenager's observation had accidentally peeled back the curtain on a collapsing marriage. When Greg came into the kitchen the next morning, casual and groggy, Lisa could barely look at him. She wanted to scream, cry, demand answers, but instead she handed him coffee in silence and watched as he sipped it like nothing had changed, but everything had. That ordinary moment in the kitchen, Tyler's offhand comment, the smell of reheated food, the hum of the microwave, had shifted the ground beneath her feet. It was the moment she realized how emotionally alone she had become, and how far Greg had already drifted from her. Not physically, but in ways that felt irreversible. She didn't say anything that morning, not yet, because once you speak a truth like that aloud, you can never unhear it. You can never go back to not knowing. Lisa waited 2 days before saying anything. She needed time to sit with the betrayal, to figure out whether this was a momentary distraction or something deeper. But the more she tried to carry on like normal, school drop-offs, work emails, folding laundry with a blank stare, the more it festered. One night, after Tyler had gone upstairs to play video games, she finally sat Greg down in the living room. Her voice was calm, too calm, that kind of dangerous quiet that follows a slow, burning fire. "Who is Marissa?" she asked. Greg blinked, thrown off. He adjusted his position on the couch, buying time. "She's someone from work, marketing team." Lisa stared at him. "Why is she telling you she misses your late night talks?" He froze. His face changed. Not guilt, not fear, but calculation. He knew he'd been found out, and now the decision was whether to minimize or admit. "It's not what you think," he said softly. Lisa folded her arms. "Then tell me exactly what it is." Greg let out a breath and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He spoke slowly, as if rehearsing something. "We talk a lot. She's been a friend, someone I can vent to, that's all." "You don't tell a friend you wish you had more time alone," Lisa snapped. He flinched, caught. She could see it in his eyes, the guilt, the realization that emotional cheating is still cheating. Maybe not by body, but by heart. He had given a piece of himself to someone else. Someone who wasn't her. He tried again. "We never crossed any physical line. I never touched her. I never even saw her outside of work." "Well, except for a couple lunches," Lisa cut him off. "You had lunch with her, alone. Just twice. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't like that." She laughed bitterly. "Of course it wasn't, because texting another woman about your feelings, hiding it from your wife, and carving out private lunches, that's not romantic at all, right?" There it was the moment it cracked wide open. Greg sat in silence, not denying, not defending, just sitting in the wreckage of what he'd done. Lisa felt something inside her collapse, not with rage, but with grief. The man she married, the man who used to bring her tea when she worked late, who used to write love notes in her lunchbox, had opened up his soul to someone else, quietly, gradually, and worst of all, he hadn't even seen it as betrayal until she called it what it was. She got up and left the room, not because she wanted to punish him, but because her chest felt too tight to breathe. Later that night, when the house had gone still, she stood in Tyler's doorway. He was half asleep, one headphone in, a controller resting on his chest. "Hey," she whispered. He sat up slightly. "What's wrong?" Lisa forced a smile. "Nothing, bud. Just wanted to say goodnight." But she saw it in his eyes. He knew, kids always know, he had felt the tension. He had seen the silences at dinner. He was old enough to understand, but too young to be pulled into it. And yet, his innocent question in the kitchen had ripped the lid off something buried. Lisa kissed his forehead and closed the door. The following days were cold, mechanical. They slept in the same bed, but she turned away from him at night. Meals were shared with awkward silence. Every time Greg reached out to talk, Lisa recoiled. Not because she hated him, but because she no longer trusted the sound of his voice. They started couples therapy 2 weeks later, not because Lisa was ready to forgive, but because she needed answers. She needed to know why he did it, why he reached for someone else, why he didn't come to her when things started to unravel. Greg admitted he'd felt neglected, that Lisa had been emotionally distant, that home had begun to feel more like a project than a partnership. She wanted to scream, "I was drowning too, you could have reached for me," but she didn't. Instead, she sat quietly, letting the therapist do the work of untangling years of missed cues, unsaid words, and buried resentment. Tyler kept his distance, unsure where he fit in. He stopped bringing things up. He didn't ask questions. He played his games and avoided eye contact when they were in the same room, and that, more than anything, shattered Lisa, because his casual questions, spoken over melted ice cream, had lit a fuse no one was ready for.